So something just happened to me again. It's not the first time it happened. I've met a guy, let's call him Daniel. He turned his laptop around to me to show me his killer app, and it was beautiful. Amazing design, smooth animation, years of work, and then he told me how many people were actually using it. And while builders like Daniel are pouring months into building their interfaces, the biggest software companies in the world are going a very, very different direction. Think about it for a second. When you're creating an app, think of what you're actually asking of the user. You're asking them to stop what they're doing, go somewhere else, learn something new, learn all these new buttons, and every one of those is a friction point, and that friction is what's killing your adoption. But here's the good news. Today on Blazing Zebra, I'm going to show you exactly how to beat this step by step. Here's the whole path at a glance. And don't forget that I've got a detailed cheat sheet with all of these steps, prompts, and more available to anybody who joins Patreon. There's that, and over almost 200 others are immediately available as soon as you sign up to Blazing Zebra. This is the home of practical AI for entrepreneurs. The people who are truly ahead of the curve are doing the exact opposite of what Daniel's doing. They're not designing interfaces at all. They're building tools that AI can use. Look at Claude. This was one developer, and it really changed the world with over 310,000 stars on GitHub and all sorts of other accolades. Now look at what Peter, the creator of Claude, deliberately did not build. He didn't build a dashboard or an interface or a design. It lives inside the apps that people already use, not a website that they have to remember to visit. That strategy has a name, and it's called headless software, software with no screen. Instead of a person clicking buttons, you reach the software in other ways. This could be a command that you type, or another piece of software calling it, or an AI calling it up on your behalf. And we're going to get really concrete into all this here in a second, but for now, I want to make the simple point that the value of your software is never really the screen. It's the job that it actually does. And if this sounds like a fringe idea, let's take a look at the largest software company on earth. In April of 2026, Salesforce turned its whole platform into an API, a command line, and an agent tool. Their own phrase for it was no browser required. The biggest name in business software is walking away from its own screens. So how do you find the headless version? Well, before you build anything, strip your idea down to its bare engine. Forget the interface and get down to first principles. What work goes in, what happens to it, and what valuable thing comes out the other side. Input, process, output. The cleaner the input and the clearer the output, the stronger the engine and the more reliable it becomes. Let me come back to Daniel, because here's the twist. The part he spent months hand building, connecting people's bank accounts, pulling their transactions, sorting them into categories, is exactly the part that AI and existing services can now handle for him. His real product was never the screen, it was the engine underneath, the way that it was manipulating all of that information. And he had just buried it under 5 years of design. Here's a couple things that can make this way easier. First, focus on describing the job with your AI, not the exact tools. When you bring your idea to your favorite AI coding tool, don't ask it to wire up a specific stack. Tell it what should happen from end to end and let it find the simplest path. The job is the durable part, and the tools are all interchangeable. Second, force the whole thing down into one input and one output, especially if you're just starting out. Hold it to a hard test. It should take the user under a minute. It should save them at least a couple hours of manual work. The results should look professional, and there's a clean moment where the user's going to go, "Oh, this looks great." That could be a bank statement turned into a clean spreadsheet, or a recording turned into different show notes. One job done well beats 10 jobs done halfway. Here's a quick prompt you can use to run all of your ideas through that filter. And when you're ready to scope the real first build, this one is going to narrow down that full version to just a single feature you can focus on. Here's a quick story on why this is really worth it. I've got a person, she's becoming a pretty good friend, Vanessa. She showed me 4 different tools that looked nothing like one another. One lived inside WordPress, another inside of another convoluted platform. I never would have guessed what she was about to say next, because these looked so completely different on the surface, but all 4 were running on her one video engine plugged into all these different people's frameworks, and it just worked. The more places it plugs into, the more users that she can get, and whatever tool you're working on can do the exact same thing. But even with the right engine, you're going to burn weeks. You can't afford rebuilding what already exists, which brings me to the next step. Don't build what you can borrow. Here's a piece of math that I think about quite a lot. Effort times leverage equals reward. Your effort has a hard ceiling, and there are only so many hours in the day. Leverage almost has none. So the smart move here is to put your limited effort on top of work that already exists. Think about the companies most famous for building everything in-house. This includes SpaceX and Tesla. And even they don't start by building. They run an exhaustive search for what already exists first, and they only build from scratch when nothing else will do. If the most vertically integrated companies on earth shop before they build, you've got to do the same thing. For you, that search is easier than it's ever been. Just point Perplexity at GitHub and look for code bases that are close to what you're trying to make. There's a staggering amount of open source software out there, and there's more and more getting written all the time. And a lot of the really hard parts of what you're trying to do have probably already been created and tested by somebody else. Research what existing infrastructure might handle the most difficult or regulated pieces, and really focus on what's the smallest piece that you genuinely need to build yourself. Most of what might feel like the build is already sitting in tools that you can assemble. And remember, your job is the engine in the middle, not the plumbing all the way around it. Got to start small. In the headless world, you don't have to build something super massive to be really, really valuable. The smallest version is something you probably already have. This is just a simple skill. A skill is a named job that you trigger and it just runs without a screen. And that's headless software in its most approachable form. Perhaps a skill that turns intake forms into a one-page client briefing, or a skill that turns one post into a LinkedIn version, a newsletter, and a thread. Maybe a skill that scans a folder of contracts and flags the risky clauses in there. No login needed, no dashboard needed, just a simple job that gets done effectively. The fastest way to find your first one is to look at the work that you repeat. Anything that you do the same way more than a few times a month is a great candidate. Now, a word of caution, because this is where most people go wrong. They start by going way too big. Someone once told me about their very first vibe coding project. They wanted to build Google Maps for drones. A live global map of every drone in the air. And I had to be honest with them that that's not a very good first project. The kindest thing I could think to say was to shrink that down into solving one real problem in a simple way. Start with a skill, not the whole sky. But once you have a small win under your belt, you're going to want to do something a bit more. Going bigger takes a few new ideas. Here's a slightly bigger idea. Think about shipping your product as a tool that an agent can call, something just wired to a database that you control, so there's really no interface to design. Think of your headless software as two very separate parts. There's that core engine, which is the work, and that's the data. Then there's the doors, which is how the engine gets reached. You build that engine once, and then you choose which doors to open. The same engine can be reached by a command that you type, or another software through an API, or by an AI agent acting on behalf of the user. Most great product ideas only need really one or two of those doors, so you open the ones that your users are actually going to use and ignore the rest. The engine itself is usually simpler than it sounds. At its core, it's just a set of actions on some specific data. You want to create, read, update, and delete. That is the whole job of most software underneath that screen, underneath that design. And it really pays to actually picture this. Picture these records inside of your software, the customer record, the order record, the document records, and then there's the handful of actions that change them, that update them, that delete them. Once you can see your product as a database plus a set of actions the AI can perform, then you've got the real shape of it. In fact, a huge number of startups are really scrambling right now to build better memory into these AI agents, and underneath all that, this is all they're really doing. So just think of a place to store your records and clean actions to change them. If your idea grows way past a single job and you're starting to use a lot of different AI in it, maybe there's several agents working together, there's something you want to think about is just stepping up a level and thinking about designing all of this more like an org chart than, a piece of software. The rule underneath all this is fairly simple. Before you write a prompt, you really want to ask, what role is that agent playing? And again, inside of your headless software, you might be allowing a user to access your various custom agents inside of Claude. And for me, it's been helpful to think about a hierarchy of those agents, who reports to who and what gets handed off. Design that team and then build the workers. And the payoff for all this is that your product plugs in directly wherever your users already are. So this could be inside of Cowork, inside of Slack, even over text messaging, instead of a website that you're forcing them to visit and learn how to use. But look, don't think of headless as a religion, because sometimes the screen is exactly right. Sometimes the experience itself is the product, and these can be consumer apps that people open for enjoyment, or anything where the visuals or the feel is the actual point. tools where browsing and clicking are the actual value. In those cases, the screen is not friction, it's the product, and you should build it well. My friend Kristen is a perfect example of this. She's been building these beautiful calculators for home mortgages, and she wants them on a screen on her website where people can find them and solve their problems. For her, the screen is the whole point. It drives traffic. It helps people directly right there on that page. Going headless would lose that entire value right there. So the test is simple. Ask who the real user is and what the real value is. And if it's a person who wants an experience, then probably the screen is the way to go. If it's a person who just wants the job done or an AI doing a job for them, then you want to go headless. Most business tools fall into that second group, which is exactly the point of this video and why so many people building tools really don't need to focus on those beautiful dashboards or those beautiful interfaces, as fun as it is to build them. And even with some of those mortgage calculators that I was just speaking of, you can probably think of ways that you could plug those into a headless version and reach a bunch more people without giving up the calculators that live on those web pages. So we don't always want to just have to force ourselves into a decision. Is it going to be headless or a screen? Sometimes it's both. Another good example here is if somebody makes a change to your database or makes a change to the data, they might want to see on a screen that, hey, this actually changed, to verify that it's been done correctly. These headless builds still have to solve something that there is a massive demand for. And I see a lot of people focusing in areas where this is not the case. So here are a few lenses to help you find these different things instead of just chasing some sort of random idea that just popped into your head. So first, these asymmetric situations. So look for places where demand is suddenly outrunning supply or where a rule just changed and dumped new work on a ton of people. So here's an example of exactly what I'm talking about. Colorado's got a new AI law that's going into effect at the end of June 2026. And so overnight, all these small businesses are going to have to start building these transparency reports and bias audits. These are things that they don't have staff for and that can run from $5,000 to $50,000 a year to create. So as this rule changed, the work appeared and that help has not caught up. And that's a gap opening right there that you can build some headless software to solve. Second are these capability bets, and this is where you want to focus on what just became possible in the last quarter, last few months, something like that, not only just where the pain points might be. So these AI agents crossed into a genuinely reliable phase in 2026, handling multi-step jobs that were just too flaky to trust only a year ago. So when something that used to break all the time and now just works, that's a window of opportunity, and that's where you can move in and the playing field is a little more wide open. Third is complexity absorption. I've talked about this in other videos, finding these messy, dreaded tasks that everybody hates, that eats up a chunk of their week. Often this is a compliance or cross-system sort of busy work, and just build headless software that swallows that for them. People will pay well to make that recurring headache disappear. Here's a prompt that you can use to scan a specific industry for that first kind of opening, which is often the easiest to act on. So here's what you can do today to start taking action on all of this. Take one idea that you've been sitting on and write it down in a single plain sentence. Then sketch that headless version. What's that one command that would run it, and what would an AI agent call to get this job done? If you can answer those two questions, you've got the start of something real, and you've skipped the weeks of interface design that sink most projects before anybody even opens them. Charlie Munger had a line that I love: take a simple idea and take it very seriously. So the simple idea here is the job. It's that pain point that it solves. It's not the screen. It's the job that's the product there. So take that seriously, and your software has got a real shot at actually getting used. If any of this resonated with you or gave you some sort of a clearer way to think about what you're building, make sure to check out the Patreon, because the cheat sheet goes way deeper into all of this. There's a link in the description below here. And once you join Patreon, you've got access to almost 200 other cheat sheets just like it. So jump in there, support Blazing Zebra. Again, this channel is dedicated to practical AI for entrepreneurs. That's my whole mission in life. And on that note, I've got another video I want you to check out. This is all about using Claude for project management. If you haven't checked that out yet, there's a link right here. I'll see you over there.
Make your dreams come true.